Mark was out hiking when he spotted a black cobra. He tried turning back, but he was horrified when the snake lifted its head and looked at him intently. Mark froze for a moment. He did not know what to do. He knew that there were no snakes living in the wild here. It must have escaped. The cobra began to slither towards him. Mark was absolutely caught off guard. The snake looked really very weak. Maybe it needed some help. Mark tried crawling back because he was shocked at how fast the cobra was approaching. He had no idea what the cobra wanted from him. He did not want to risk getting hurt. He felt that the animal needed help, but he decided to hide first. While hiding from the snake, he saw that the snake looked very weak. There was also something different about the snake. The snake had a giant bulge. This could not be good. Mark came from his hiding place, but then he saw that the cobra was aggressively approaching him. Mark completely froze, and when he regained some composure, he realized it was too late. He started running in a desperate attempt to get away, but he then stumbled over a branch. He knew he was in trouble now. Mark was amazed that the snake didn't try to attack him. Instead, the snake wrapped itself around his ankle and looked up at him with its beady eyes. Mark was taken aback, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he stood there, watching as the snake flicked its tongue in and out of its mouth. Suddenly, the snake raised its head and let out a low hiss. Mark was startled but quickly realized that the snake was trying to communicate with him. Mark had no idea what the snake was trying to tell him. Mark was still hesitant. He did not dare to touch the snake because he knew it was extremely venomous. Mark quickly realized that the snake hardly had any energy. It looked extremely weak. And Mark noticed something that he had seen earlier about the snake, something that could explain what was wrong with this snake. Mark notices a giant bulge on the snake's belly. He quickly realizes that this could be the reason that the snake is so extremely weak. It did not look good. He had to get some help. He could not just let the snake here all alone. Mark decided to call a vet. He hoped that the vet had enough experience with this to help him out or to at least guide him. The vet is extremely confused about the call and thinks that he got prank called at first, but then he instructs Mark to touch the bulge, which he should not have done. Mark hesitantly tried touching the snake, but then he almost fainted when the snake started hissing really loud. The snake got really aggressive toward Mark, and Mark needed to stay composed. He had hurt the snake a lot by touching the bulge. The vet urged Mark to stay calm, but the snake looked very aggressive. If Mark would make a sudden move, he would definitely get bit. The vet then asked if Mark could describe the snake to him. When Mark said it was a black snake, it got silent on the line. The vet was very shocked about what Mark had described. The vet knew that one bite from this snake could be fatal. He was concerned for both Mark and the snake. Mark had to keep his composure, but the snake needed quick medical attention as well, and it needed to be captured. The snake got even more in distress. It kept hissing like it was in a lot of pain. The vet knew he had to go to the forest because there was no way Mark could capture and provide aid for the snake. He then came up with something to calm the snake down. Mark got the advice to give the snake a little bit of water to try and calm it down. When Mark reached for his water, the snake kept following all of his movements. It looked really weak now, so when Mark poured some water in a glass, the snake lunged at it. The snake started drinking some water. It seemed like it calmed down the snake a little bit. Mark was relieved at least he did not have to fear for his life. The snake also loosened his grip on Mark. However, the snake still was looking terrible. Mark kept repeating that the vet had to come because it needed medical attention. They could not wait for very long because nobody knew what was going to happen. There was only one major problem that couldn't be ignored. Mark was deep in the forest, and the vet was pretty far away. He couldn't reach Mark easily with the necessary equipment he needed. Plus, he needed special transport to traverse the forest. There was no other option than to wait. The vet ensured he would come. Mark told him that he had a friend with a truck that could drive through rough terrain. This was the perfect solution. The vet quickly drove to the address to make sure he could come to provide aid. Then something happened with the snake. Suddenly, the snake started to slither away. Mark was absolutely baffled. It was like the snake had the urge to go somewhere. Mark wasn't going to let the snake die, so he decided he would go after the snake to see where it would go. The snake wasn't very fast, and the giant bulge gave the snake even more problems. Mark could easily follow the snake thanks to this. He did not know where the snake would lead him, but when he realized where he went, his jaw dropped. Apparently, the snake had made a nest inside an old tree. Mark was absolutely baffled by this. He had no idea what he was witnessing. However, when he tried to get close, the snake got very defensive. Mark had to watch out. Meanwhile, the vet had also called the police because of a very dangerous snake that was loose. They had to make sure the area was safe, and that the snake could not go anywhere when the vet got there. The police were shocked by the whole story, but they immediately jumped into action. They took it very seriously because people would get hurt if the black cobra would escape from the forest into the city. They could not let this happen. The police made sure that they contacted animal control services as well. They would combine their forces to make sure the snake is returned to where it came from. They still had no idea how it ended up inside of the forest. He had to have come from somewhere. Mark tried to approach the nest from different angles, but the snake kept defending the nest. There must definitely be something in the nest that is worth protecting. Mark was absolutely sure of it. Then after a last approach, the snake gave up. The snake was apparently so weak that it almost appeared lifeless to Mark. When he took a closer look, he saw that the snake was lying on something in the nest. He knew he had to wait for help to figure out what this could possibly be. Mark heard that the vet is an hour out. He had the feeling that the snake might not make it. The vet did everything he could to arrive on time. Luckily for Mark, he heard something in the distance. Someone was approaching him. Mark was relieved when he heard sirens. The police and animal control was already arriving at the scene. They could not do much about the snake, but at least it was kept safe until the vet would arrive, which could be any moment. Officer David approached Mark and thanked him for his information. He also told Mark that they needed to quarantine the area since this was a very dangerous animal. Mark was caught off guard by this. He was not allowed to stay. He tried resisting. The resistance from Mark was futile. David told Mark that if he did not clear the area, they had to arrest him. David assured Mark that they would keep him informed about the snake and what would happen. Mark reluctantly walked away. Mark then heard screams from where the snake's nest was. Animal control was trying to catch the snake, but the snake resisted. Some officers were trying to help as well. Mark knew that only the vet should approach this animal. Then something tragic happened. One officer got bit by the snake when he came too close. He was screaming in pain. He had never felt pain like this before. He was immediately rushed back to a police car. He had to get treated in a hospital. Officer David then wanted to retaliate. He rushed towards the snake but was held back by other officers. He wanted to put the snake down. Someone from animal control told him he could not put the snake down. It is a protected species. But David did not care. Just when David wanted to shoot the cobra, he heard a loud voice demanding him to put the gun down. Mark heard all the commotion and broke the quarantine area. David urged him to go back before he would get arrested, but then the vet arrived just in time. The vet was trying to get closer fast. He told David to go away and asked Mark to stay close. The vet slowly tried to approach the snake, but the snake would not have it. The snake kept defending his nest. He was really angry about all the commotion from earlier. The vet had no other option but to sedate the snake. He shot a tranquilizer dart into the snake, but he turned pale when the snake was not sedated. This was the only sedative he had on him. What could he do now? Someone from animal control came rushing to the vet. They luckily found some strong sedatives enough to put an elephant down. The vet was relieved he could now safely sedate the snake. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the snake was sedated, and the vet could approach. The vet could finally properly inspect the snake. It was so heavy that he could not lift it by himself, so he still had no idea what he was protecting. However, the main concern was the giant bulge in the snake's belly. It seemed like there was something stuck. The vet concluded that the black cobra needed an operation. However, there was one problem. He did not have the necessary equipment with him to actually perform the operation on the spot. The snake had to be transported to the city. With all of the people present, including Mark, they lifted the snake from its nest and carried it into one of the largest cars that were there. They had to quickly transport the snake before it would woke up again because they had no more sedatives. And Mark noticed something else. Underneath the snake was a couple of eggs it was protecting. Mark decided he would also take the eggs because that would keep the snake a little calmer if it were to wake up. They needed to be kept warm. Yvette guided the driver to where he needed to go, and the police meanwhile helped escort the vehicle. They called some reinforcements to clear the road in advance for a smooth way through the city. Bystanders were absolutely baffled when looking at what was happening. They arrived within the hour. However, right when they wanted to transport the snake inside, it woke up. Everyone quickly left the vehicle. Yvette ran inside to get some more sedatives. Luckily, he had enough, and they could transport the snake inside. Yvette quickly starts operating on the giant snake, but before he would get to the giant bulge, he spots something else. He could not quite see what it was. He had to get a little deeper into the skin, but it did not look good. Eventually, after getting some help from his assistant, he removed something. Mark was watching from the window and could not quite make out what it could be. Then one of the police officers there gasped. He knew what it was. There was a chip embedded into the snake's skin. They needed to immediately get their hands on this. This could give them the answers they were looking for. They knew for sure that this would lead them to whoever set the snake free. The chip was given to an IT professional at the police, and he quickly deciphered it. This led them to an abandoned warehouse at the docks where they arrested a snake smuggler who quickly confessed to smuggling. The snake had escaped during a recent sale. Yvette also saw where the giant bulge came from. The giant bulge was an egg that was still stuck in the snake's belly. So with a little bit of a miracle, they could remove the chip, catch a smuggler, and save a snake. Luckily, the snake was quickly healthy again, and the eggs were intact. The snake was transported to a local zoo where it would get proper care, and the eggs could hatch in safety. Mark regularly visited the zoo to see if the snake was doing fine. He was proud of what he had done for the snake.